Callan stepped off the rusty shuttle and onto the wet metal walkway of Virix 9. The air was thick with smoke and ash, the sky above colored a dirty orange. It was supposed to be just another scavenger trip, nothing more. He needed parts, tools, maybe a rare chip or two to sell. But something felt off today, and he couldn't say why. As he walked past the crowded market, loud voices shouted over each other, vendors selling strange meats, glowing mushrooms, and black market tech. Aliens of all shapes moved through the mess, ignoring everything but profit. Then, from a narrow alley between two broken buildings, he heard it, a small whimper, almost like a scared animal. Callan stopped, turned his head slightly, and listened again. The sound came once more shaky, like someone trying not to cry. Most people ignored it, too busy with their trade. But Callan moved toward the sound, curiosity tugging at his feet. The alley was dark, wet and cold. There, half hidden behind a broken crate, was a small alien girl. She looked no older than 6, maybe 7. Her skin was pale green, lips trembling, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her thin clothes were soaked from the mist that always fell during mornings on this planet. She didn't look up until Callan knelt in front of her. Her big eyes were wide with fear, glowing faintly in the dim light. "Hey," Callan said gently, "are you okay?" The girl looked at him, lips quivering. She tried to speak, but only a soft choking noise came out. Finally, after a long breath, she whispered, "Please help them, my mom. She won't stop shaking." Callan's heart sank. This wasn't just a lost kid. This was someone begging for help while everyone else passed by. "Where is she?" he asked quickly, trying not to scare the girl further. The child pointed with a tiny hand, her fingers shaking just like her voice. "Back there. She's sick. I can't wake her." Without hesitation, Callan said, "Show me." The girl stood on unsteady legs and led him deeper into the alley. They walked past old crates, dripping pipes, and a collapsed stairwell. At the end was a rusted door, almost hidden behind layers of scrap. The girl pushed the door slowly, and it creaked open with a groan. Inside was darkness, and the strong smell of mold, rust, and something worse. Callan pulled out a small light and aimed it around the room. On the floor, wrapped in a torn blanket, was a woman. Her body trembled violently, like her muscles were locked in a never-ending spasm. Her skin had sores that glowed slightly under the light. Her face was pale, lips cracked, breathing shallow. Callan rushed over and knelt beside her. He gently placed a hand on her forehead. It was burning hot. He checked her pulse. It was weak and fading. "What happened to her?" he asked the girl. "She was fine. Then the men came. They gave her something." Callan froze. "Men?" "What men?" They said. "They were helping," the girl whispered, voice tight with fear. "But they lied. And now she's like this." Callan's jaw clenched. This wasn't sickness, not natural anyway. It looked like a reaction to something chemical, maybe artificial. He had seen this kind of shaking before on soldiers who had been tested with nerve gas, but never on civilians, never like this. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a small med scanner. The device blinked red almost immediately, showing signs of toxic contamination. But it didn't match any known disease. That meant one thing: it was man-made, secret, and likely illegal. He looked at the girl again. She stood by the wall, hugging herself, her eyes begging him to do something. "I'm gonna help her," he said firmly. "Can you stay strong for me? Just a little longer." The girl nodded, though tears streamed down her face. Callan wrapped the woman tighter in the blanket and lifted her slowly. She was light to light, as if she hadn't eaten in days. "Hang on," he whispered to the unconscious woman. "You're not dying today." Outside, the colony buzzed with noise and life. But inside Callan's heart, a storm was rising. Someone had hurt this woman, left her here to die like garbage, and no one even blinked. Callan didn't come here to be a hero, but now he couldn't walk away, because one little alien girl had looked him in the eyes and begged, "Please save my mom, human." The metal door groaned like it hadn't been opened in years. Callan braced his shoulder and pushed harder, the rust grinding under pressure. The alien girl stood behind him, clinging to the edge of his coat, her eyes locked on the shadows beyond. When the door finally gave way, the heavy stench of mold, chemical rot, and sickness hit him like a slap inside. The room was darker than night, no lights, no warmth, just dripping water, and the sound of shallow, broken breathing. Callan activated his wrist light, casting a soft blue glow through the gloom. It wasn't just a room, it was a cage. The walls were made of cracked stone and scavenged panels. The ceiling had patches of dried blood and burn marks. In the far corner, curled on a stained blanket, lay the woman. Her body shook like her bones wanted to break free. Callan stepped closer, his boots crunching over broken glass and old injector casings. Her eyes were half open, glassy, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The sores on her arms pulsed faintly, glowing a sickly green under his light. Each tremble looked more painful than the last. She wasn't like this before, the girl whispered. Standing at the threshold, she used to sing to me, braid my hair. We had a garden. Callan knelt beside the woman, gently touching her forehead. It was burning, hotter than any fever he'd seen, and yet her fingers were cold like ice. I need to get her out of here, Callan muttered, scanning the area. But something made him stop. Etched into the wall behind the woman were numbers, not drawn in marker, but scratched into the stone, rows of numbers, one after another, like dates, or worse, experiments. Do you know who brought her here? He asked, eyes still on the numbers. The girl shook her head. They came at night, in white suits, with silver masks. They took her from our room and brought her back like this. They called her Subject 47. That name hit Callan like a punch. Back on Earth, in the darker corners of classified reports, he had read about illegal trials on alien colonies using locals as test beds for bioweapons. But those were just whispers, rumors, stories buried by officials. And yet here it was Subject 47, shaking on a floor, dying in front of her child. Callan opened his satchel and pulled out a portable bioscanner. He attached it to the woman's wrist and ran a deep scan. Toxic contamination confirmed. But the compound was unknown and registered in all major databases. That meant someone had built this virus in secret and used it on her. She's not the only one, is she? Callan asked aloud. The girl didn't answer, just lowered her head on a nearby shelf. Half hidden behind scrap, Callan found old ID tags, 3 of them, all with different alien names, and none belonging to this woman. They were all labeled incomplete. Suddenly, a crackling noise came from behind the wall. A speaker, a hidden camera. Callan turned fast, raising his light, but the sound faded. Just static, or maybe a warning. Someone knew he was in this room. We have to leave, he said sharply, wrapping the woman's body in the blanket. But where will we go? The girl asked, fear thick in her voice. To someone who'll care, he replied. Someone who still remembers what compassion looks like. He lifted the woman, cradling her gently. She let out a soft sound, like a whisper, almost impossible to hear. Callan leaned close. What did you say? Her lips moved slowly. They lied. The cure is inside. The light, the light. Callan looked around, confused, but her eyes rolled back, and she fell silent again. He turned toward the girl. Let's go. Now, as they stepped out of the room, the door slammed behind them on its own. The sound echoed down the alleyway like a warning bell. Callan didn't look back, because whatever that room was, it wasn't just a hiding place. It was a secret, meant to be buried. But now, someone had opened it, and the truth was leaking out. One shaking girl, one dying mother, and one human who wouldn't walk away. Callan didn't sleep that night. He sat in an abandoned supply hut on the edge of the colony, with the alien woman lying unconscious. Beside him, the little girl had curled up near her mother, eyes wide open, afraid to blink. Outside, the sky crackled with static storms, lightning that danced in silence, far too organized to be natural. Callan's mind spun with questions. Who were the men in white suits? Why was no one in the colony willing to speak about them? And most important of all, what was the cure inside the light? As dawn broke over Virix 9, the mist returned, thicker than the day before. Shadows moved in it, slow, deliberate, too calm to be random workers. Callan knew this colony had secrets, and now he was knee-deep in one of them. He wrapped the woman in a clean thermal wrap and handed the girl a protein cube. Then he slid out of the shelter and made his way back to the colony's inner sector. He wasn't going to ask for help. This time, he was going to find the truth himself. The main medical center sat in the heart of the colony, a clean gray building that looked too perfect for a place so dirty. Callan walked through the front gate with confident steps. The receptionista, bot with a smiling screen, greeted him with fake cheer. "Welcome. How may we help you today?" "I need records," Callan said. "Environmental scans, medical logs, any recent containment orders." The bot paused, flickered, then answered. "There have been no quarantine events recorded in this colony within the last 6 cycles." Callan frowned. "Then what's with the emergency sirens last night?" The bot blinked. "No alarms were reported in our logs." He leaned in, voice low. "I saw a woman shaking with unknown illness and sores that glow." "Still," the bot smiled. "No such patient exists in our database." Callan took a step back, slowly turning away. But inside, he knew what this meant. The system was scrubbed, the records erased, the illness buried. He left the center and walked around the rear alley of the building. There, behind a locked storage gate, he spotted something, a biohazard crate marked Zone Q7 Do Not Open. There was no Zone Q7 on the colony map. Callan pulled out his data pad, accessing an old mapping app from before the colony's redesign, and there it was, Q7, once listed as a research sector, now missing entirely from official records. He checked the coordinates. The location pointed to the eastern edge of the colony, a place the locals called the Rot Caves. As he turned to leave, a soft beep came from his wristcom. A private channel had just activated itself. He tapped it, and a voice came through, low, tired, and afraid. "You're looking where they told us never to look," the voice said. Callan froze. "Who is this?" "They used to call me Nurse Tauren," she said. "I worked on Subject 47, your girl's mother." Callan looked around quickly, checking if he was being watched. "What happened to her?" "The cure's not in the medicine," Tauren whispered. "They lied. The cure is stored in a reactor prototype. Its light frequencies slow the infection." Callan's chest tightened. "The light," he repeated, remembering the woman's final words before passing out again. "Where is this reactor?" "Inside Zone Q7, Tauren said. "But if you go there, you won't come back alive. Unless you're ready to break the rules." The line went dead. Callan stood in silence as a drone flew past above him, scanning lazily. He tucked his comm away and turned back toward the shelter. He found the girl still awake, sitting beside her mother, brushing her weak fingers with trembling hands. When she saw him, she asked, "Did you find help?" Callan nodded slowly. "I found something. Better a chance." The girl's eyes lit with faint hope, but then she asked, "Why does nobody talk about us? Why do they look the other way?" Callan knelt in front of her. "Because this colony hides its shame behind silence," he said, "but we're going to make them listen." He packed his bag, double-checked his tools, and loaded one plasma blade just in case. The Rot Caves were known for one thing, death. But if that's where the cure was hidden, then Callan would walk through the darkness to bring back the light. Because someone had erased this woman from the records. They tried to erase her child's voice too. But now, one human had heard it, and that was enough to change everything. Callan moved like a shadow through the forgotten paths of Virix 9. He didn't use the public gates this time. He took old cargo tunnels, climbing through rusted vents and abandoned stairwells. Every step brought him closer to the truth and deeper into danger. The map on his wrist lit up again. Zone Q7 was just a few meters ahead. Except there were no warning signs, no fences, no guards. Just a broken metal door half covered in vines and ash. Like someone wanted it hidden, not protected. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. Dust fell from the ceiling with every movement. The air was thick with old chemicals, and the lights flickered with dying power. Inside were rows of shattered glass tanks, empty beds, and steel operating tables. But what chilled him most were the walls. They were lined with data cores, hundreds of them, blinking quietly, still alive, still running. He approached one marked Project Silence Phase 2. The system was old, but Callan's scavenger tools weren't just for junk. He bypassed the firewall using an old bypass chip, illegal, but useful. The terminal opened, and the screen glowed. Bright with unread files. Subject log for 7A, female, half virulent, mid-age. Reproductive capability. Yes, Colin's blood turned cold. The document showed everything capturing. Testing, exposure levels, side effects, and trial failures. They had tested bioweapons on alien women to observe reproductive resistance and neurological decay. They weren't curing anything. They were designing slow-kill formulas sick enough to break the body, slow enough to study the death. And the mother, the one shaking and dying in that shelter, had been patient zero. Colin's hands tightened into fists as he kept reading. Another file loaded. Recommendation: terminate. Subject for 7A memory crystal extracted. Wait, memory crystal. He quickly clicked the file, and the screen shifted to a short report. Subject's mental records uploaded to Sector Alpha. Under security tag, L source, light cure pathway. The cure wasn't just in light. It was stored in her mind, copied before the sickness stole her consciousness, and it was taken away, hidden somewhere in a part of the colony no one knew existed. Just then, footsteps. Callan froze and killed the terminal light. Crouching behind the rec table, two figures entered, wearing black hazard suits with red visors. Someone accessed the core, one of them said, scanning the room. Tracks are fresh. The other replied, they've seen too much. Callan held his breath. They weren't guards. They were cleaners, the kind sent to erase problems, not solve them. He waited until they passed, then crept to the opposite side. There, near the fire exit, he spotted a case-sealed cube with a glass top. Inside was a glowing green shard, suspended like a jewel, etched on the front. Subject for 7A, neurocore sample. His heart pounded. This was it, the proof, the mind crystal they'd taken. From her. He smashed the case, grabbed the shard, and slipped it into his pouch. The alarm didn't sound, but the temperature dropped instantly. From the corner, a red mist began to hiss into the air. Security gas. Callan bolted for the door, coughing as the chemicals burned his lungs. He barely slipped through before the blast shield locked behind him, sealing Q7 again. Back in the alleyways, he ran through the smoke and sirens. By the time he reached the shelter, he was soaked in sweat and coughing hard. The girl jumped up, grabbing his arm. What happened? What's that in your hand? Callan dropped to his knees, holding the crystal in front of her. Your mom's mind, her memories. They're in here. The woman lay still, barely breathing, but her body had stopped trembling. She's stabilizing, Callan said. Shocked, maybe she's connected to the crystal somehow. The girl touched the shard gently. And for a second, just a second, her mother's fingers twitched. Colin's eyes widened. There's still a chance, he said softly. But if they find out we took this, they'll come. He packed quickly, wrapping the woman and grabbing the crystal tight. We're not hiding anymore, he told the girl. We're going to make them pay for what they did to your mother. Because these files weren't just secrets, they were crimes. And now, the truth had a witness, a child who begged for help, a man who answered. And the files they were never supposed to find. The sky over Virix 9 was no longer orange. It had turned red, not from sunset, but from emergency lockdown lights, pulsing across the skyline like a silent warning. Callan moved fast through the back alleys, one arm supporting the unconscious alien woman. The girl kept close behind, carrying his satchel with trembling hands. Inside that bag was the glowing crystal, her mother's memory, her last chance. But now the colony was awake, and something was coming for them. They reached the edge of the district, where old loading cranes and cargo shuttles sat rusted and forgotten. Callan had hidden his small escape craft. Beneath one of the larger wrecks, he tossed the thermal blanket over the woman and began prepping the engine core. We're almost out, he said to the girl. Just a few more minutes. The girl stood silently, her eyes watching the rising mist. Then she said something that made Callan freeze. Why? Is the mist humming? Callan looked up sharply. He heard it too, a low, vibrating hum, like an engine. But not from above. It came from the ground. Then he saw them. 6 dark figures rising from the smoke-black armor. No insignias, red glass helmets, silent response. Team, the kind that didn't speak or rest. They eliminated. The girl gasped and backed up, clutching her mother's arm. Callan shoved the crystal deep into a secret compartment in the shuttle's wall and slammed it shut. Get inside. Now, he shouted. drawing his plasma knife from his belt. But he was too late. One of the soldiers raised a sonic pulse rifle and fired. The shot hit the ground beside Callan. Exploding in a blast of smoke and sound, he flew back, ears ringing. Chest burning, the girl screamed and covered her mother's body with her own. One of the soldiers stepped forward and said in a cold voice, "Turn over the subject and the illegal data core, and you will not suffer." Callan coughed and stood up, blood on his lip. He wiped it away and smiled grimly. "You really think I'd believe that?" The soldier raised his weapon again, but Callan hurled a flash-burst grenade to the ground. Light exploded in all directions, blinding the squad for 3 seconds, just enough. Callan leapt forward and tackled the nearest one, slashing through the chest plate with his blade. Sparks flew, and the figure collapsed. He ducked another shot, rolled to the girl, and grabbed her hand. "Run." Together they bolted behind the scrap heaps. He activated a trap he'd set earlier, a crate full of plasma canisters rigged to overload. The explosion roared behind them, sending flaming debris flying through the air, but still they were followed. The girl's breath came in ragged gasps. "My mom, she's still back there." Callan grabbed her shoulders, eyes locked with hers. "She won't be if we die now," he said. "Trust me, we're coming back for her." They reached a hidden vent that led beneath the docking platforms. Sliding inside, they crawled in. Silence, metal echoing with every breath. Colin's heart raced. One mistake, and they'd be found. When they finally emerged on the far side, they climbed into an old mining buggy. He hot-wired it with shaking hands, engines coughing to life. As the vehicle pulled away, they saw smoke rising in the distance, the place where the woman had been left. Surrounded by black-armored death, the girl sat silent, staring out the window. Her lips moved without sound. She was praying. Callan glanced at her. "I didn't leave her to die," he said softly. "I left her to save you both." But in his heart, guilt weighed heavy. He didn't even know if she was still alive. He didn't know if they'd taken her, or if they'd killed her where she lay. One thing he knew: he couldn't run forever. They had the files, the crystal, and the truth. The only thing left now was to fight, because this wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a mission. A child's mother had been taken, and behind her, 100 others before her. And unless someone stopped it, it would happen again. Callan looked at the girl, her tiny hands shaking, her eyes full of fire. "You still with me?" he asked. She nodded without hesitation. "For my mom," she whispered. And the buggy disappeared into the smoke, carrying a man, a child, and a stolen secret, one that powerful people were willing to kill for. Callan didn't speak for hours. As the buggy roared across the ash plains, the girl sat beside him, wrapped in silence, the wind whipping her small face. Her mother was gone, taken or worse. And yet the girl hadn't cried, not once, not because she wasn't hurting, but because she was waiting for the man beside her to keep the promise he had made. As the sun vanished behind jagged cliffs, they reached the edge of the black ridge, a place no patrols entered. Callan brought the buggy to a halt near a hidden outpost carved into the rock. This place wasn't on any maps, but it wasn't forgotten. "Stay close," he said to the girl as they stepped through the stone opening. Inside, old machines buzzed to life, and yellow lights flickered along the ceiling. The smell was sharp metal, oil, and old hope. A tall woman appeared at the far end, her arms crossed and face hard. She had deep scars and metal implants along her jaw. "Callan," she said dryly, "I thought you were dead." "Not yet," he replied. "But she might be." He gestured to the girl, who lowered her eyes. "This is her daughter," he said quietly. "They took her mother." The woman stared at the child for a long moment, then turned toward a back room. "Bring the shard," she ordered. "If we're going to extract anything, we'll need full power." Callan followed her into a lab filled with humming machines and glowing screens. He placed the memory crystal into the center unit. The system blinked, recognized it instantly, and began decrypting. As code ran across the monitors, the girl stepped beside the table and whispered, "Is she still in there?" Callan looked at her, then at the screen. "I think a piece of her is," he said gently, "and I'm going to bring her back to you." But things weren't that simple. The crystal didn't just hold memories, it held neural blueprints. genetic decay patterns, and something else, something alive, the woman Colin's old contact. Dr. Rayla leaned in close to the data stream. This isn't just a cure, she muttered. It's a map to the virus itself. Callan frowned. What do you mean? She knew what they were doing, Rayla said, scrolling through the logs. Your alien subject 47 recorded the full mutation cycle in her mind before they wiped her. She understood the virus, how it moved, how it ate the nerves, and how to stop it. Callan felt a spark of hope. Can you recreate it? The cure, Rayla nodded slowly. Yes, but I'll need something else, something alive. Callan understood immediately, her body. If they could recover the mother while she was still breathing, they could use her biology to match the memory. Code, it was their only shot, but Rayla added one more thing. The memory shard is decaying. You have less than 24 hours. After that, it turns to dust. Callan turned to the girl. Her small hands clutched his coat, her eyes pleading. You said you'd save her, she whispered, voice shaking. You said you wouldn't let her die. Callan dropped to one knee, looking her in the eyes, and then slowly he removed the metal ring from his finger. It glowed faintly, humming with a warm light. This, he said, is a binding oath token. I never gave it to anyone, not even in war. He slipped the ring over her finger. You asked for a promise, he said. So here it is, sealed by blood and breath. I swear on everything I have left. I will bring her back. The girl stared at the ring, stunned. She didn't understand the human custom fully, but she felt the weight of it. She nodded, lips trembling. Then I believe you, she whispered. That night, Callan prepped his gear in silence. He reloaded his plasma blade, boosted the buggy's engine core, and plotted a course back into the storm, because if he didn't reach the facility before dawn, the mother's body would be gone forever. As he climbed back into the buggy, the girl ran out and handed him something small. It was a worn bracelet made of woven vines and beads. This was hers. The girl said softly, give it back to her. When you find her. Callan took it, nodded once, and drove off into the rising wind. The storm howled, but his mind was quiet, because this wasn't about running anymore. It was about returning, not just to rescue a dying woman, but to restore a family, because a little girl had asked a human for help. And now, that human had made a sacred promise, and Callan never broke a promise. The wind screamed across the ruins of Sector Delta. Ash rained from the sky like snow. But Callan didn't stop. The engine of the buggy roared like a wild beast, pushing through fire, fog, and wreckage. Ahead stood the medical testing compound, burned, broken, but not empty. Drones circled above like vultures, scanning for movement. He had less than 20 minutes before sunrise, and the crystal in his pocket was already dimming. Inside the compound, the air was thick and heavy. He moved fast, using every trick he knew. Blind spots, broken corridors, collapsing vents, no guards this time. Just silence and the smell of burned steel. When he reached the isolation chamber, the door was open, and there, in the center of the ruined room, lay her, the alien woman. Subject 47, her body covered in new wraps, hooked to a flickering life support pod. She wasn't dead, but she was close, too close. Come on, he whispered. Sliding to his knees, he opened the hidden panel on his arm and linked the memory crystal. The system blinked, barely responding. The data was unstable, breaking apart. He inserted the crystal into the core port on her bed unit, and then he placed the beaded bracelet gently in her hand. Your daughter kept this, he said. She's waiting for you. Don't make me break my promise. The lights dimmed, then pulsed. Then the machine made a single long tone match found. Callan stared at the screen as her brainwave pattern suddenly aligned with the memory input. He saw it, fragments of her voice, her thoughts, returning like puzzle pieces. Her body twitched once, then again. A long, ragged breath escaped her lips, and then her fingers moved. Callan leaned closer, not daring to blink. Her eyes fluttered. Just a little, her mouth opened slightly, and she whispered, barely audible, is she safe? Callan smiled, and for the first time in days, he felt something lift off his chest. She's safe, he said softly. She believed you were still in there. She never gave up. Tears rolled down her cracked cheeks, and her hand reached weakly toward the bracelet. She made this for me, she murmured. She wore it until it broke, I fixed it for her. Callan touched her forehead gently. She still wears it. Now it brought you back. Suddenly alarms echoed in the distance. Drones detected the activation. Backup would arrive in minutes. He had to move now. He unhooked her from the system and carefully lifted her into his arms. She was still weak, but no longer trembling. Her breathing was steady, her skin cool. She was alive. He sprinted through the ruins, dodging sparks and falling walls. The buggy engine had already been remotely started. He planned for this by the time the black-armored enforcers appeared. The buggy was tearing into the dust. Too fast to follow. Back at the hideout, the girl stood outside, hands gripping the edge of the cliff. She saw the buggy lights approaching and ran forward. Her voice cracked with joy. Mom. Callan jumped out and opened the back door. The woman weakly sat up with help, eyes glassy but focused. When she saw her daughter, her whole body shivered, not from sickness, but from relief. The girl climbed inside and threw her arms around her mother, sobbing, "You came back. You came back." The mother kissed her forehead, whispering over and over, "I'm here, I'm here, I'm here." Callan stood back, watching the scene with tired eyes. His body ached, his arms were cut, his breath heavy, but his promise had been kept, and sometimes that was enough. Later that night, as the three sat around the old heater, Rayla returned with results. "The crystal's gone," she said, "but the data's been secured. The cure can be finished. Others can be saved now." The woman looked at Callan, her hand holding her daughter's tightly. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why did you help us?" Callan looked into the fire. "I didn't come here to save anyone," he said. "But when your daughter looked at me, I saw someone who believed in hope, and I couldn't let that die." The girl smiled up at him. "Does this mean you're staying with us?" she asked. Callan paused, then nodded. "For a while," he said. "At least until the stars stop hiding." The mother smiled too, tears in her eyes. "Then you're not just a savior. You're part of our family now, and somewhere far away, in a forgotten lab, the files once meant to disappear were spreading across the galaxy. The truth had found a voice, all because one human stopped, listened, and made a promise. A promise that saved a mother and healed a child's heart.